Welcome to Sports Talk with L-Beasley. It is Monday afternoon here for me in Detroit, Michigan. To all my fans and supporters, I apologize. I missed pretty much all of last week. No episodes were done due to the fact that I go to Specs Howard, which is a broadcasting media art school here in Detroit, Michigan. And I had to deal with finals. So that was the reason I was unable to do my show. I was focused on my finals, studying and whatnot, stressing and things of that nature. So to all my fans and supporters, like I said, I did not have a chance to really let you guys know that's what was going on. So all my fans and supporters who were looking forward to my show, I do apologize. I definitely missed you guys. I wanted to give you some insight on what I was thinking and what was going on. But like I said, finals had to take place and I had to study for them. So for those who understand, thank you. For those who don't, tough luck. I'm not going to apologize because school comes first with me, as it should with any student. But at the end of the day, like I said, that was what it was. So to all my fans and supporters, once again, I apologize for not letting you guys know. Hopefully you guys understand. For those who don't, tough luck. But, like I said, get over it. But just moving on, it is Monday afternoon, like I said, here for me in Detroit, Michigan. And, just kind of going back to what's been going on in the NFL, some interesting games that happened. A lot of people were really upset, even though the Atlanta Falcons did end up beating the Cardinals. A lot of people were just upset by how the way Atlanta played. Matt Ryan turning the ball over. Atlanta just didn't look like the Atlanta that, pretty much fans, Atlanta Falcon fans, and just fans of the NFL have been, pretty much used to seeing. And my thoughts on Atlanta are pretty much this. With the Atlanta, like I said, they could go undefeated into the playoffs. My whole thing with Atlanta has always been the same thing. I have rooted for Atlanta plenty of times because I've always been a big Atlanta Falcons fan since my Vic was pretty much there. So I've always liked Atlanta Falcons. I like Matt Ryan in college. I love Julio Jones. Loved him since high school. So this is a team that I've tried to support. I always look for them to do stuff. But like I said, I don't really even make a big deal about them in the regular season. My thoughts on Atlanta has always been the same thing. Let's see what you do when you get in the playoffs. Atlanta has, this is probably, since the last couple of years, it's probably their best record. But, as far as just, Atlanta goes, like I said, they could have went undefeated. I still wouldn't have really been like, ooh. My whole thing is with Atlanta, I like what I'm seeing, and I see some things I don't like. But, and I like the fact that they were able to rally off, despite Ryan's 5 interceptions and things like that. It's always good to see a team be able to still get a win even when your quarterback plays horrible. But like I said, my whole thing is just looking into the future as far as the playoffs go. Like I said, that's really my main thing. Let's see what you do in the playoffs. And hopefully it is something well, because I wouldn't mind seeing Atlanta, go far in the playoffs and win a Super Bowl eventually. But my whole thing is that's really what I look at for Atlanta. I don't care, like I said, they can go undefeated. Until I see what they can do in the playoffs, I'm not really going to get excited or dog them. Matt Ryan, as far as MVP, I never really thought he was an MVP for this season. Me personally, for me this season, it would probably have to be somebody like a Tom Brady, definitely a Peyton Manning or Adrian Peterson. A lot of people said this kind of threw Matt Ryan out the MVP race. In my opinion, no offense, but he was never really in it. I'm just saying, but that's just me. But in my opinion, he was never truly in it. But, everybody had their opinions. But like I said, that's my thoughts on that. The thing that also in the world of NFL, 2 overtime games that really bothered me. So first, the Dallas Cowboys had to go on overtime to beat the Cleveland Browns, who are 2-8, by the way, and 0-5 when they're away. So that really bothered me, the fact that you struggled to beat the Cleveland Browns of all teams. No offense to the Cleveland Browns. I think y'all got somewhat potential with Trent Richardson back there at running back. But, for you to have to go into overtime and win it with a field goal, that bothers me. I'm not a Cowboys fan anyway, so I can really care less. It's just funny to me. Going into the other overtime game, that really kind of bothered me. The Houston Texans had to go into overtime with the Jacksonville Jaguars to win and ended up winning 43-37. First thing that bothers me is the lack of defense from the Houston Texans, because they don't generally allow 37 points to be scored. Especially by a 1-9 Jaguars team, that really bothered me. The fact that they let the Jaguars actually score the ball the way they did, and they let them score the ball through the air. That was the other thing that really bothered me. And I love Chad Henne. That's a Michigan Wolverine alumni. I'm a Wolverine fan, so I love Chad Henne. I'm happy he's getting his shot to do his thing with Gabbard out and everything like that. And it's safe to say he'll probably even start next week, or he even should start next week. I don't care if Gabbard is healthy, but for the Texans defense, who I feel, is a legit defense. Is it the top? Is it the best? No, not necessarily, but it's definitely is it the best? Not necessarily, but it's still a top defense, one of the top defenses in the NFL. So for them to allow the Jacksonville Jaguars to score 37 points and let them pretty much kill you through the air, because the running back didn't. I mean, the running game was nothing in Jacksonville. I mean, I think they had maybe like 80 yards. 80, 90 yards. They had 0 touchdowns. So this is not something that they got through the run, the running game. This is something they got through the air. Chad Henne threw for nearly 400 yards and had 4 touchdowns. So this is something that bothered me about the Texans kind of in this game, like I said, from a defense standpoint. And then offensively, Matt Schaub was cool. He threw for about nearly 530 yards, passing, had 5 touchdowns, but Foster couldn't get going. Had 77 yards off 28 carries and he had 0 touchdowns. And that's what bothers me. Like I said, a team has to be balanced offensively. And when you're not, I believe it's going to hurt your team. And I've said that so many times before, and they continue to prove my point time and time again. And that's what it showed. The passing game was the only really form of offense that they had, unfortunately, and it showed. But like I said, more than anything, that non-defensive stance bothered me by the Houston Texans. But at the end of the day, they won. Hopefully they learn from it, and we'll see what happens. The Jets and the Rams, I don't really make a big deal about that. I mean, technically, Jets should beat the Rams, but, I'm not going to really get into that. The Eagles, continue just to have their downfall. Michael Vick did not play, so Foley is in, he's struggling, but, anybody's going to struggle. LaShawn McCoy suffered concussion, had to be carted off the field. So prayers are with him. But, RG3 continues to do what, does what he does best. First of all, he threw for a 93% quarterback rating last night, or the other day, I should say. He completed 14 of his 15 passes, threw for 200 yards, 4 touchdowns, rushed for 84 yards. So this guy's just doing his thing. Like I said, I still think he needs better help from his skill players, like his running back, like his receivers, like his offensive line. So he continues to get help and maybe a better coach other than Mike Shanahan, because I don't like Mike Shanahan. We'll see what happens as far as that goes. Saints beat the Raiders, no surprise there. Broncos, once again, doing those close games where they take here and they're sweating for a good minute. But, Chargers can't seem to defend anybody, Broncos scored 17 unanswered points in the second quarter. They just continue to score pretty much from the second quarter on. So, like I said, definitely Peyton Manning is changing that team around and threw for nearly 300 yards and had 3 touchdowns. Peyton Manning, I'm talking about there. So he continues to have an MVP season, making that Denver Broncos team better and better. And that defense is definitely something to look out for. The Ravens are able to rally against the Steelers. Mainly due to Jones' punt return. That's pretty much what helped the Ravens win that game. But at the end of the day, I'm trying to see how the Ravens are going to rally with, obviously with some key injuries on defense and just seeing how they're going to play offensively. Flacco, and that offense still continues to struggle, though. Flacco threw for 164 yards, 0 touchdowns. Ray Rice only had 40 rushing yards, 0 touchdowns. So he continues to struggle. The Patriots blew out, the Colts as they should, 59-24. Andrew Luck, he did what he did his best. But Brady did what he's supposed to do, which is be the veteran and outshine the young rookie. So no surprise there. I'm not even going to front. It's not a surprise. Like I said, really the turnovers was more what kind of bothered me, I guess you could say. Just, the fact that they had 4 turnovers, talking about the Colts right there. They had 4 turnovers. So that was definitely a cause to be concerned. You can't turn the ball over and think that you're going to win the game. That's another thing that messed Pittsburgh up, had 3 turnovers. You can't turn the ball over 3 times and think you're going to win a game. But some people can. That's just the way it works. And my Detroit Lions, I said time and time again, I don't mind teams who shut the Lions down, because I think they need to learn their lesson the hard way. I'm sick of them playing to the fourth quarter against mediocre teams, and then when they play teams like the Packers or the Bears, all of a sudden they want to play for 4 quarters and think that they're just going to automatically come out and win. Obviously, it's not like the Packers just blew them out, but, Packers executing the clutch, and Stafford and them, blew opportunities, still are showing me some signs that I've been talking about before, had 4 turnovers. You can't have 4 turnovers and think you're going to, win the game, just typical Lions. So, like I said, hopefully they're learning from it. From what I can see, they're not, but, time will tell, but I'm not surprised at all by that. And then, moving on to some other stuff that's going on in the NBA. As most people know by now, Andrew Bynum suffered or injured his knee while bowling. For those who follow Andrew Bynum, Philadelphia 76ers, we already know he's been hurt. He's supposed to be rehabbing, but he went bowling apparently and he damaged his knee. So in my mind, he keeps this is just typical Andrew Bynum, from that stupid looking haircut, with that stupid looking afro. I mean, this is just, he's behaving to me like, somebody immature Andrew Bynum. I mean, that's always, even in LA, that was his problem. He was immature. He didn't go bowling while he was injured, but he was immature in LA, doing stupid stuff, shooting threes, then getting mad at the coach for telling him he can't. But this is just him showing his immaturity, in my opinion. Andrew Bynum, you're getting older. It's time for you to start realizing, what, if you want to have a successful career, you can't do stupid stuff like that. I'm not saying you can't go bowling, but did you ask if it was okay to go bowling? I mean, anybody who's gone bowling before knows that. I mean, I know even personally for me, when I first tore my ACL, I couldn't go bowling like that. I had to wait a minute because it is a strenuous thing on your arms and your legs. So yeah, you do have, especially depending on how you bowl. If you bowl correctly, it can be strenuous. So this is just, like I said, immaturity showing. Hopefully it doesn't hurt the Philadelphia 76ers in the long run, but I just like to see better decisions out of him. I don't know if I'm ever going to see them. I hope to, because I just hate to see this immaturity from anybody. Like I said, these are players who are getting paid millions of dollars to put a ball in a hoop, and y'all crack me up with some of the stuff that y'all do off the court, on the court, and y'all are living the lavish life, being able to play the game that you love and get paid for it. So, like I said, it's very irritating to see people just, do stupid, immature stuff like this and not take responsibility, or take responsibility and then laugh about it. It's like, come on. You're getting older now. I know when you came in, you were young, but it's starting to get a little old with the immaturity. I'm young. Just like I said, before with other players. You can only say that for so long. Once you're in here for a minute, you should know better. Moving on to the Los Angeles Lakers, Mike D'Antoni was expected to make his debut yesterday night when the Lakers played, but unfortunately, as I said before, originally he wasn't even expected to be back until December because of his knee replacement surgery. So, he said he didn't really feel up to it. So he didn't end up, it would have been nice to see him, but he said, no, I'm not going to coach tonight. So Bernie Bickerstaff resumed his role as interim head coach. They ended up beating Houston Rockets 119 to 108, which was nice to see. So Bickerstaff and the Lakers are 4-1. Our 4-1 since taking over for the fired Mike Brown, so that's been impressive to see. And as far as I know, Mike D'Antoni has said that he would like to keep Bickerstaff on his staff for the remainder of the season. Me personally, I think I have to laugh and say I think that Mike D'Antoni and Steve Nash are trying to make their debut together. It's been rumored that it could be Tuesday that he coaches. It could be a little bit longer, so we'll see. But me personally, I wouldn't be surprised if he's trying to make their debut together. Never know. I think that's just how it is. Moving on to the rest of the stuff that's going on in the NBA. You got the NBA basketball once again. Rankings are out as far as this goes right now. And surprisingly, the number one team right now, as far as the NBA goes, if you can believe this, as far as rankings, if you go on ESPN.com and you look at the rankings, the number one team is the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, the Memphis Grizzlies are currently 8-1. They're unbeaten in November, 15 straight wins at home, dating to last season. They've had victories over the Heat at home, Thunder on the road, and Knicks at home. And this is just, the Grizzlies are just playing, good basketball right now. Not really a surprise. Like I said, Memphis Grizzlies, in my opinion, are one of those teams, like I said, at least in my opinion, who have what they need to be successful. Are they a championship caliber team? Maybe. But I've always felt like the Memphis Grizzlies always had, they had good pieces to be successful in the West. And they know what it takes to keep, going. Like I said, they had those runs in the playoffs these last couple of years where they've had to compete, So we know they know what it takes. Like I said, they have good quality players in Mike Conley, in Marc Gasol, in Zach Randolph, in Rudy Gay. This is a team, like I said, who has the pieces that they need. They just need to continue to stay healthy. And just, like I said, it's a long season. 8-1, I'm not going to lose my mind. It's only 8-1. We got plenty of more games to go. It's nothing to get crazy over. But it's still just nice to see them playing well. Like I said, they're 8-1 right now. New York Knicks continue to be successful. They're 7-1. They're the are the first team ever to get out rebounded in every game of a 6-0 start. So that's just the New York Knicks. So like I said, I'm not really surprised by that. I'm some more surprised that everybody is buying into the defensive system of the, and mainly, Carmelo Anthony doing his thing defensively, and it's been great to see. I'm happy to see the Knicks doing well, but my question will remain the same. What will happen to the New York Knicks once Amari Stoudemire gets back and once Iman Shumpert gets back? As far as Amari Stoudemire is concerned, there has been some talk that with Amari Stoudemire, one of the reasons, he's going to have to come off the bench because Melo's playing so well at the four, which I have said so many times. He plays well at the four. He has some of his best years, best scoring points. His best averages are at the four position. Look it up if you don't believe me. But some people have said Amari will come off the bench. And like I said, my whole thing is Amari in that mindset where he's ready? That's where my question lies. It's not a question of can Amari do it? Can Amari be physically ready? Because I think if he takes time, I think he'll be fine. I'm more worried about him mentally. Like I said, that's always been the issue. Can Carmelo Anthony and Amari Stoudemire be on the court at the same time? Are they both willing to make sacrifices to win? And like I said, it's more just about what do you want? If you want a ring, if that's your goal to take this team to the NBA championship and get a ring, then it shouldn't be a problem. But that's the whole thing. Is he gonna make the sacrifice if he is forced to come off the bench? Is he ready to do that? Even if he isn't forced to come off the bench and you put him in the starting lineup, is he willing to work together and not play his role? And those are the things that come in with the New York Knicks, and I'm concerned about. Like I said, until he gets back, I'm not gonna be worried. I'm not gonna worry about it. Like I said, definitely they're 7-1. They're doing their thing, and just seeing once Iman Shumpert gets back, seeing his rotation as well, because this is a team full of a lot of guards. So I would like to see, like I said, obviously Iman Shumpert's he's a two guard, so technically, he has a two guard body. He played the one at Georgia Tech, and obviously New York Knicks have tried to, keep him at that spot. So I mean, obviously you can put him at the two, but I still just want to see rotation wise, with the way JR is playing. Obviously Jason Kidd and Raymond Felton are playing well at the 1 and 2 when when they're both in the game together. So just seeing how Iman Shumpert's role is going to fit. I'm not really worried about him coming back and making an impact. I just want to know what his role is going to be like. Los Angeles Clippers are ranked number 3 right now at 7-2. Jamal Crawford is the league's biggest all-star ballot right now. It's like, star pretty much. But, really more so, I'm not even impressed with Jamal Crawford, maybe because I just expect that from Jamal Crawford. Not that I expected him to, just, score the way he did. But I knew coming to the LA Clippers, he was going to have an impact. Jamal Crawford generally makes an impact on whatever team that he goes to. It's very rare. I mean, you could say last year with Portland, he struggled. But I felt like that was more because that wasn't his system and he wasn't let free to do what he wanted. But more importantly, like I said with the Clippers, the success of the Clippers is going to be based off so many other players besides Chris Paul. Like I said, DeAndre Jordan had to step up. Eric Bledsoe had to step up. Blake Griffin had to step up. That was the biggest problem with the Clippers last year, especially going into the playoffs, was Chris Paul was the only one stepping up. Everybody else acted like they had never been there before, which some of them hadn't. Others were acting scared. They didn't know what to do. And when you have people like DeAndre Jordan, Eric Bledsoe stepping up, you have Blake Griffin who's shooting 67% from the free throw line after shooting 52% from the free throw line. He's nearly at 70%. He's shooting better. The Clippers' new offense, their offensive efficiency is better as a whole. And quite frankly, their defensive efficiency is looking pretty good as well, which is nice to see. So like I said, just looking at them, like I said, this is not too big of a surprise. Like I said, it's just funny because, you have certain role players who step up on other teams. Matt Barnes is playing well for the Clippers. But, he didn't play well for the Lakers. Terry Off is playing well for him. But, it's so many different, question marks as far as different guys. And like I said, obviously the question is if Lamar Odom can get going back to Lamar Odom form, if this Clipper team could be even more of a monster. Everybody has their speculations on whether Lamar will truly ever get back to Lamar Odom, or if it's, until he gets back in Lakerland, or if everybody has their questions about Lamar Odom. Even Grant Hill. Let's see when he gets back how this team plays. But like I said, as long as they stay healthy, they continue to show consistency on a offensive and defensive level. There's no reason this Clippers team can't be successful. I've said that time and time again. Moving on, number 4 is San Antonio. Number 5 is Miami. Number 6 is the Thunder. Number 7 is the Lakers. Number 8 is the Milwaukee Bucks. Number 9, the Atlanta Hawks. And number 10 are the Boston Celtics. I don't really have much to say on any of those teams too much. Milwaukee's playing okay. Milwaukee has pieces. Are they elite? No, but you are in the East. We all know the East isn't the strongest conference in the world. So I would like to just see how Milwaukee continues to fare. Oh yeah, and just to mention, the Brooklyn Nets are ranked 12th. Like I said, if you want to see the rest of the rankings, go to ESPN.com and see what the experts think and where they rank your team. But just, going into, like I said, just the talk, some people still been asking me about the Lakers, how do I feel about the Mike D'Antoni? And like I said so many times, offensively, I think he's great. I really do. Like I said, I think he's going to open up doors for this team. But as I said so many times with the Lakers, it's just going to be real interesting to see once Mike D'Antoni gets there, how his system works. Like I said, so, when he was in Phoenix, you dealt with a lot of shooters. You don't have that on LA. You don't have a lot of great shooters. It's not going to be necessarily a lot of penetrate and pop like he did in Phoenix with Steve Nash. So now you have to figure out a way. The two has always been non-existent for the most part, or always been that pure shooter for the Phoenix Suns, back when he coached there or for New York. So now you have Kobe. Kobe doesn't necessarily need you to create opportunities for him. He can create them for himself, but at the same time, I like to think that, he would enjoy Steve creating the opportunities and him getting easy shots. So that's definitely going to be something to see as well. But just looking at the Lakers, offensively, I think this is going to be a fine move. Like I said, I'm still worried about them defensively just because they're the Lakers. So I want to see how they're going to do defensively. Until I see them play, I'm not going to call it. But my whole thing has been with the Los Angeles Lakers, just seeing what's going to happen after this. That's pretty much always been my whole thing with the Los Angeles Lakers. Let's see what happens after this season. If they aren't able to, like I said, scoring is not a problem, rebound is not a problem. Passing has been somewhat of a problem. And like I said, defensively, they have improved somewhat, moving up to 13th in points allowed. They only allow 95 points per game, but that's still way too many points to be allowed. So like I said, my concern is still defense. When you play teams like the Clippers, when you play teams like the Heat, when you play teams who can outscore you, what will you do? Because like I said, certain teams, yeah, you can probably stop them once or twice, like I said. But when you play teams who can outscore you or match up with you very well, what are you going to do when you play those teams? And that's where your defense is going to come in handy. So I'm just really interested to see, like I said, how the Lakers are going to play once Mike D'Antoni gets on the sideline. Like I said, I want to see this Lakers team succeed. I want to see Nash, Dwight, other guys get their first rings. I also want to see Kobe get his next ring. There's plenty I want to see, but like I said, we'll see what happens, but that's really my thoughts. If you really want to know my thoughts on the whole Lakers situation, just go back to my previous episode from last week and you find out all I had to say about it. Agree or disagree. And then lastly, the Monday Night Football game is tonight. We have the Chicago Bears versus those San Francisco 49ers. Now, this, of course, was the game to look out for first off, just for the fact that it's the Chicago Bears and the San Francisco 49ers. Two of the top defensive teams in the NFL. Both have pretty decent records. 49ers are 6-2. The Bears are 7-2. But now it's even more of an interesting game to watch because now both quarterbacks, at least according to sources, are both out. Jay Cutler is out for the Bears, which means they're going to turn to Jason Campbell. And for the 49ers, it has been said by sources that Alex Smith has been ruled out. Again, this is according to sources, so that means Colin Kaepernick will step in for the 49ers. And going into this game now, I'm definitely looking to see who can protect the ball the best. This is a real area of strength for both teams, and they're both well-coached teams. Now, the 49ers just don't turn the ball over on offense. They only had 9 turnovers for the season, and we know the Bears can definitely create takeaways. Tillman is a beast at punching that ball out with his little boxing jabs. He's the only player I know who uses boxing jabs to get a football out in football. But hey, that's what I'm looking for. Obviously, San Francisco 49ers, they know how to create pressure and create turnovers as well. So I'm really looking, like I said, you got not young quarterbacks, you got 2 quarterbacks, who are coming into this game. Like I said, these are not your starters. Jason Campbell has been known to struggle. Colin Kaepernick, at his moments. So I'm really just looking to see who's going to step up from the quarterback standpoint. But also, both teams have a nice running game. Let's see how Matt Forte steps up. Let's see how Gore steps up. Hunter steps up. Bush steps up. This is what I'm looking at. Except for Chicago Bears, let's see how Forte steps up. Let's see how Michael Bush steps up. For San Francisco, let's see how Frank Gore steps up. Let's see how Hunter steps up. And even, like I said, receivers, hey, go out to make the catches. But like I said, one thing about them are both teams are well-balanced offensively. Both are known, to have, good rushing yards, good passing yards. But the question is who can protect the ball the best. Like I said, Bears basically have, I think, 15 interceptions when rushing 4 or fewer this season. with 5 touchdowns allowed. So I'm definitely looking to see if the Bears are going to continue that trend. But like I said, I really just want to see who can protect the ball the best and who can execute. It's going to come down to execution, balance, and who can protect the ball. If they can do that, if the Bears can do that, they should win. If the 49ers can do that, they should win. But that's going to be the thing. Who can protect the ball best, who's not going to turn the ball over, who can execute without their starting quarterbacks in, and mainly when they find the balance. Because both these teams have good running backs and good running back game, but can they find the balance which is going to make them successful? You can't run it all day. You can't pass it all day unless one of the defenses allows you, but I would be really shocked if they allowed that. So anyway, that's it for me today. Thank you for tuning in to this episode. Once again, to all my fans supporters, sorry I didn't let you guys know. Like I said, hopefully you guys understand I was taking finals. Well, let me know what you think of this episode. If you agree or if you disagree, if there's a topic you want me to discuss that I did not discuss, college football, NBA, NCAA basketball is back. Whatever it is, let me know. Like I said, if it's a topic you want to discuss, player, coach, team, let me know. Whatever sport it is, just let me know. All my contact information is on the credits at the end. Go check out MoneyballSportswear.com. They're a huge supporter of me, Sports Talk with huge supporter of me, Lauren Beasley, and my show, Sports Talk with L-Beasley. So go check out MoneyballSportswear.com. The only way to ball is Moneyball, so go check them out. Also, if you want to be a guest on your show, if you want to be a guest on my show, I'm actually doing some expansion stuff for Sports Talk with L-Beasley, which I hope to be announcing soon. But in the meantime, if you do want to be a guest on my show, let me know, because I definitely want to get you on. Or if you want me to be a guest on your show, be sure to let me know. My contact information is on the credits at the end, so go check that out. Once again, thank you for tuning in. I appreciate all my fans, supporters, all the great comments. Keep them coming, loving the support. So thank you for tuning in. Enjoy this Monday Night Football game. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, and I will see you guys tomorrow.